Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Yende. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had a moment when it suddenly hit you? I'm exhausted. Not just tired, not sleepy, exhausted, burned out, emotionally drained, mentally depleted, physically flat. And yet, when you looked back, the signs had been there for weeks, maybe months. The poor sleep, the irritability, the brain fog, the drop in motivation, that constant feeling of being on. The truth is, burnout rarely shows up overnight. Burnout is not an event, it is a process. A biological process, one that begins long before you consciously realize anything is wrong. And today, for the first time in human history, wearable technology and artificial intelligence may be able to detect that process before you feel it, before the symptoms, before the collapse, before the crisis. Today, we're exploring one of the most exciting frontiers in health intelligence: how AI-powered wearables can identify burnout before your conscious mind even realizes something is wrong. The biggest myth about burnout. Most people think burnout begins in the mind. They believe it starts with stress, frustration, overwork, emotional exhaustion. But neuroscience tells a different story. Burnout often begins in the body, long before it appears psychologically. The nervous system starts changing, sleep starts changing, recovery starts changing, hormones start changing, the brain starts changing. The body begins paying the price long before the mind notices. That's why so many people are shocked when burnout finally arrives. The biological damage was building quietly in the background. Your body is constantly tracking stress. Every second of every day, your body is monitoring heart rate, breathing, sleep quality, body temperature, stress hormones, recovery status, energy availability, inflammation, and nervous system activity. The challenge is that most of these processes operate beneath conscious awareness. You don't wake up and think, my autonomic nervous system is showing early signs of overload. You simply feel normal until you don't. The HRV signal, one of the most powerful biomarkers for burnout prediction, is heart rate variability, or HRV to HRV measures the variation between individual heartbeats. Contrary to popular belief, a healthy heart is not perfectly regular. It constantly adapts, responds, adjusts. Higher HRV is generally associated with recovery, adaptability, resilience, stress tolerance. Lower HRV often reflects physiological strain, poor recovery, chronic stress, inflammation, autonomic imbalance. And here's what makes HRV so powerful. It often changes before symptoms appear. Your wearable may detect physiological stress while you still believe everything is fine. The autonomic nervous system. Burnout is deeply connected to something called autonomic balance. The autonomic nervous system has two major branches: the sympathetic system, often called the fight-or-flight system, and the parasympathetic system, often called the rest and recover system. Healthy humans move fluidly between the two. Work, recover, stress, relax, challenge, restore. Burnout happens when recovery becomes insufficient. The nervous system gets trapped in a state of chronic activation. The accelerator stays pressed. The brakes stop working. And eventually, the entire system begins to malfunction. What happens to sleep? One of the earliest warning signs often appears during sleep. Most people assume burnout affects work performance first, but the body usually reveals the problem overnight. Sleep becomes fragmented, deep sleep declines, recovery decreases, heart rate stays elevated. The nervous system struggles to switch off. Even while you're asleep, your body may still be in a state of alert. Biologically, it's still at work. That's one reason people with burnout often wake up feeling tired, even after spending enough time in bed. The quantity of sleep may not change. The quality does. The cortisol story. Now let's talk about cortisol. Cortisol is often described as the stress hormone, but cortisol itself is not bad. In fact, cortisol is essential for life. It helps us wake up, focus, respond to challenges, generate energy. The problem comes when cortisol rhythms become disrupted. A healthy cortisol pattern looks like this: high in the morning, gradually declining throughout the day, low at night. Burnout often disrupts that rhythm. Evening cortisol stays elevated. Recovery is impaired. Sleep suffers, inflammation rises, and the nervous system loses flexibility. The body becomes stuck in a state of biological vigilance. Why you don't notice it? This is one of the most dangerous parts of burnout. The brain adapts. You get used to feeling stressed. You normalize poor sleep. You normalize fatigue. You normalize brain fog. You normalize anxiety. You normalize exhaustion until dysfunction starts to feel normal. And because the changes happen gradually, you may not realize how far you've drifted from your baseline. That's where wearable technology becomes incredibly valuable, because data does not normalize dysfunction. Data sees the trend. The power of longitudinal data. Imagine measuring your physiology once. Helpful. Now imagine measuring it every day for 6 months. Now patterns begin to emerge. Subtle changes. Declining HRV, rising resting heart rate, worsening sleep quality, reduced recovery scores, increased physiological strain. No single measurement may seem alarming, but the trend tells a story, and trends often reveal burnout before symptoms become obvious. Enter artificial intelligence. This is where AI changes everything. Humans are not good at detecting subtle physiological drift. Artificial intelligence is dire. AI systems excel at pattern recognition. They identify changes too small for the human eye to notice. Tiny shifts in HRV, minor sleep disturbances, gradual changes in recovery, small increases in physiological stress. Individually, these signals may seem insignificant. Collectively, they may predict future burnout. The future of health intelligence is not just measuring data, it's understanding what the data means, and the burnout inflection point. Perhaps the most important concept is the inflection point, the moment adaptation becomes overload, the moment healthy stress becomes chronic stress, the moment resilience begins declining faster than recovery. Most people discover burnout after crossing that threshold. Predictive AI aims to identify it beforehand, when intervention is still possible, when lifestyle changes can still help, when recovery is still achievable, before health consequences become severe. Who is most at risk? Burnout does not affect everyone equally. Some groups face a higher risk: entrepreneurs, healthcare workers, executives, caregivers, students, shift workers, parents, frequent travelers. Anyone facing chronic demands without enough recovery. The common factor is not workload. The common factor is imbalance, stress without restoration, output without recovery, performance without renewal. The OXYZEN perspective. At OXYZEN Health Intelligence, we believe the future of healthcare is shifting from diagnosis to prediction. Historically, medicine waited for symptoms. The future identifies risk. Historically, healthcare reacted to disease. The future anticipates it. Wearable technology offers something extraordinary, a continuous conversation with your biology. Your body is always sending signals: HRV, sleep, recovery, stress, readiness, resilience. The question is no longer whether the signals exist. The question is whether we are listening. What the future looks like. Imagine receiving an alert that says your physiology suggests rising stress and declining recovery. Not because you're sick, not because you're injured, but because your biology is drifting toward burnout. Imagine intervening weeks before symptoms appear, adjusting workload, improving sleep, enhancing recovery, restoring balance. This is where predictive health is heading, not disease management. Health preservation. Final thought. Burnout doesn't happen in a single day. It happens one poor night of recovery at a time, one elevated cortisol cycle at a time, one suppressed HRV reading at a time, one ignored warning signal at a time. The future of health intelligence may be the ability to see those signals before they become symptoms, to recognize physiological strain before psychological collapse, to understand your biology before your biology forces you to pay attention. Because the most powerful healthcare intervention is not treatment, it's prevention. And sometimes your body knows you're heading toward burnout long before your mind does. I'm Dr. Yende, and this is OXYZEN Health Intelligence, helping you decode your biology, one insight at a time. Thank you for listening.